Challenge yourself to change lives with the Big Belt Buckle Challenge. They make a no-strings-attached charitable donation when participants complete one or all of the 6 athletic challenges. In doing so, they aim to build a worldwide community that transcends sport and encourages people to make a positive lifestyle change while helping those in need. For 2023, a difficult but doable set of challenges has been created by Jeff Privete himself. They have all been inspired by his personal experiences throughout 2022. The events can be done in any order, and with the exception of the Road Gravel Challenge, there is no time limit for completion of a given event. All you have to do is make it through. Completing all 6 will require an incredible amount of dedication, courage, and a willingness to embrace the journey, regardless of the outcome. Won't you join Jeff at thebigbeltbucklechallenge.org? This is the Big Belt Buckle Challenge. Hello and welcome to the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Jim Riley here with Rod Kuntz. Rod,
hey everybody.
Another week, another show.
Beautiful.
I have noticed we're getting a lot of downloads on these shows. So I want to thank everybody for listening and your encouragement and positive words. And we are open for topics. If you want to throw a topic our way, if you're in the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate and you listen to this, you know how to get a hold of us. So send us a topic and we'll talk about it. Or vice versa. Sometimes we use the topics from this show and we use it in our coaching group like this last week about resetting your life, resetting your business. And Rod, interestingly enough, the very next day, Tuesday, with one of my clients, that's all we talked about all day was resetting. And I didn't bring it up. The client brought it up. So it's pretty cool. The timeliness of what's going on. I think we're just ahead of that curve.
I think that's awesome. The other thing I want to mention with that too, Jim, is, sometimes after we do a podcast, because I think most people who follow us now know that you just spring something on me and then we kind of just take it from there, kind of like free flow, little freelancing. But I listen to podcasts afterwards and I start thinking about it after I've had a chance to literally think about it instead of just flying off the cuff. And there are things that come up to me that I think, man, this is important on that issue. And so I sometimes think maybe we should revisit that, go back to that. And I'm not going to interfere with your flow of topics, but yeah, there are sometimes I go back and I think, gosh, there's more to that. There's so much more we could discuss. We could go deeper. And if any of our listeners out there want us to go deeper on some of that, remember, we're trying to keep this in a 20-some minute time frame. So we're just shooting from the hip, like trap shoot, right? But if you want us to zero in on some long-range targets, I'd be happy to dive in deeper. But I'd like to hear what our listeners have to say.
That's a great point. And I think we will do before the end of the year kind of a recap of some of our top shows, just so we can retouch those topics and maybe encourage you to go back and listen to those. So, all right, with all the bullshit aside, let's jump into today's topic.
Let's do it.
I want to talk about investing in our future with an emphasis on our youth. And so I'm up here in my office looking out in the pasture, and I've got my kids out there in their little side-by-side. I bought them one of those Razor 200s. Max is out at, I think, 35 miles an hour. Typically, I'm out there a couple days a week running the harrow in the pasture. And if you don't know what a harrow is, it's basically like a metal rake that you drag behind a lawnmower or side-by-side, and it basically breaks up the horse manure, and that basically fertilizes the ground. And it's even better when it's raining because it really breaks down. And by the way, the pasture looks great after it rains and then the grass starts coming up. It's gotten good fertilizer. So that's typically been my task. Well, last week I invested some time in my kids. They have this little razor. I said, hey, let's hook up the harrow and see if you guys can't do this, right? It might sound easy, but that rake gets tangled up easy. You can't reverse. You got to take wide turns. You pick up rocks and different things. So it takes a little bit of maintenance. But they're out there again today doing that. And I thought, what a great learning experience for them, and they're having a blast. The 2 girls, sisters, are having fun, laughing and, driving around the backyard. But what I'm doing is I'm investing in their knowledge and understanding of how the ranch works and how to use their equipment and how to solve problems. They ran into the fence, and now, so you're dragging this rake and I'm watching them, one's getting out and the other one's kind of backing up, but she knows she can't back up over the rake. It's got a short chain behind it, and they're trying to solve their problems. And, I could have ran down there real quick and fixed it for them in an instant. But instead I stood back and just watched, how are they going to fix this problem? Right. And they did it, they got it all done. But the point of bringing this up is investing in our future, especially the youth, also means investing in your employees, taking the time to train them adequately, give them all the tools. We talked about knowing your tools as owners and leaders, but giving your employees the tools to do a great job and taking the time to teach them. And sometimes that investment into the future means sending them to a class or buying them a piece of equipment that's specific to their job, making them better. With your kids, doing something like what I've done is get them out of their comfort zone. Trust me, those kids this morning, they were ready to sit inside and cozy up to mom and read another book as part of, homeschool. But today we were going to get outside first and do the chore, but investing in these people will go so much further. And Rod, it's interesting. You've been out on the campaign trail, although locally, when you're amongst leadership in a community, I always talk about the kids. It's all about the kids, let's do it for the kids. Let's do it.
Right.
But when the rubber hits the road, the kids, I think, tend to get overlooked. It sounds great, but are you really investing in the future through our kids, through educating young adults to become leaders in your businesses, in the schools, in your community, et cetera? So I'd like to expand on that, but what are your thoughts on the topic?
Wow. So yet again, clobber me first thing in the morning with a topic like this. I'm going to start with the problem solving. And that is one of those soft skills, problem solving acumen, being able to reason through problems. And we can't do that for people. To learn that skill, you have to fail and figure your own way out. Sometimes you get yourself in trouble and it's up to you to get yourself out of trouble. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when we talk about investing in our youth, part of the problem with culture today is we haven't let them fail. We haven't let them solve their own problems. We jump in and fix it for them. And that can go from bullying to math equations. I don't care. To take it to anywhere you want. At some point, people have to learn that there are going to be people who aren't always going to be nice to them.
Hey, without getting you off track on your thought, what I want to remind people of is that when we talk about youth, that also pertains to inexperience, a lack of knowledge, lack of getting proper guidance. The youth mentally and physically could be in their mid-20s or even their early 30s.
40s, 50s.
Seriously. So I don't care how old you are listening to the show. When we're talking about youth, a lot of that comes from what you've been exposed to. And you have to remember that not only for yourself, but for people that are working for you, that they may have a youthful mind because they have not been exposed, like what Rod just said about the ability to problem solve and let them solve problems. So Rod, I didn't mean to take you off track there, but I want to remind everybody that this applies to a larger audience than what you might be thinking right now in your head.
Boy, that's a great point, Jim. And I'm glad you brought it up. One of my favorite authors, because he really focuses on soft skills, is Maury Sheckman. And he talks about, he's made his living, his entire adult life living, helping big corporations, big, high-paid, high-powered corporate executives fix problems. And when he goes in, he always says he's not there to fix their organization. He's there to help them. He said most of them are kindergartners in suits. And it's the child, the kid within us that hasn't learned how to solve problems, that hasn't learned how to cope, that hasn't learned how to fail, that hasn't learned how to ask for help. It's that kid in us that usually is standing in our way. Mm-hmm. It's our biggest obstacle oftentimes. So it's not about necessarily other people. and their problems or what they bring to the table. It's how we're dealing with that. So I'm really glad you brought that up, Jim. It's a great point. And we all have a kid in us. All of us came from kiddom, right? It's just a matter of how far away or how much we've repressed from that.
I think too, with the advent of the cell phone and the computer, that our young adults are waiting much later in life to do some of the things that maybe you and I had done at an early age. As an example, I learned to drive when I was 8 on a ranch, and I learned to drive a stick shift. And during that same summer, I learned how to drive a water truck around the horse track to water it.
Right.
I was 8 years old. By the time I was 13, I was a great driver. By the time I was 14, I had a car, and where I grew up, you had to be 15 and a half to drive, even with somebody in the car. So by the time I was 16, I was a great driver. This is just an example. Now, my brother-in-law, great guy, great family. He has a 17-year-old son that's going to be 18 in the next 2 months, I believe. Zero interest in driving, never drove a car, doesn't know how to drive a car, and probably hasn't saved a penny to own a car, and zero interest. So at what point is he going to be a driver and a responsible adult behind the wheel? 20, 25? I don't know, right? Because other things have filled his spirit and his interest outside of, tools that you need to be involved in society. And I'm not faulting him. I'm just making a point that as a society, we've pushed some of these things off. I started working when I was 13. I don't think a lot of kids aren't even thinking about working until they're beyond 18 now. So when you look at these gaps that society has created of, people being involved in business or in working or in the day-to-day things, that's why I comfortably could say youth in knowledge experience is more like in your 20s now instead of your teens, easily.
Well, I think you're right. And not only that, I think because in our culture, in most households, we've got 2 working parents, and they're not working from home. They're working outside. And when I remember growing up, and there was this term, maybe it was even later, latchkey kids.
Yeah.
That would come home from school and they had to take care of themselves and figure things out on their own, right? And now everybody wants after school programs, and they're so busy forcing kids into a paradigm, a learning paradigm or a recreation paradigm, that they're not letting kids use their own imagination to fill that time with their own interests. Maybe it's reading a book, maybe it's riding a bike, I can't tell you how many times I got home from school and I and the neighbor kids just shot basketball hoop. I mean, we played more games of horse and dodgeball and 3D ball and 500 and whatever the season was. We were outside figuring it out, even though our parents were not there. And now it's on the culture, it's on our society that we have to have a babysitter for everyone all the time, and we're not letting children figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
And if we've got young adults now who have been part of that haven't been able to figure it out on their own or been forced to, I think it's part of the issues we're seeing now later in life with a lot of these people.
Well, and the lack of employees around the country.
Correct.
How can we not have employees? Because people are satisfied at home, having a lot less. Their desire is less. They're getting whatever fulfills their soul on the computer or on the phone through Roblox or whatever that is, and they don't have an interest in going out, creating a little bit of income for themselves so that they can buy a car and drive to Glacier, or whatever that looks like. So let's shift a gear a little bit, and let's give some tangible ways that people listening could invest in the youth or in their team to get them down the road a little bit further. So I'll go first so you have a little bit of time to think about it. Not that I've already developed my list. It's going to come as we go. The first thing on my list is going to be do things with the intent to teach. As a leader, as a parent, as an entrepreneur, do things with the intent to teach. And I'll give you an example of what I did yesterday. I like to give live examples, Rod. I know you do too, because it brings it to life on how simple something can be, but yet the value in that, right? So yesterday, I hooked up the trailer. We take the kids to horse lessons, hooked up the trailer. My daughter now loads the horse because we've done it enough together. Now she does it on her own. She also latches a very difficult gate on the horse trailer. Even my wife yesterday, like, how does she do that now? I said, I don't know. She puts her weight into it and she's got the angle all figured out. It's got a really difficult latch on it. But typically, you load up and you would just jump in the car. Now, as a driver and as an experienced person of pulling trailers, I always do a walk around. Do you do a walk around when you're hauling something, Rod?
Yes, always.
Right? You always do a walk around. And I went to walk around and I thought, well, wait a minute. Let me get my daughter back out of the car and ask her to come around to the driver's side and just tell her, like, hey, we're going to walk around the trailer and make sure everything's okay. And she's like, oh, what do you mean? I said, well, first of all, we're going to start at the hitch. Are the safety chains on? Is the electric plugged in all the way so the lights are on, right? Is the cotter pin in so it doesn't come off the ball, right? Is the jack up all the way, right? And how do the tires look? Do they look full? Do they look flat? Do they look safe? Did we indeed lock the gate on the back? It's got another side door gate. Is that locked, right? And walk around the whole vehicle. And I said, okay, it's okay to get in, right? Now, after doing that a few times, she'll understand the importance, especially if we have a problem, right? And I was able to share a story with her, a really unfortunate story about some horses that fell out of an unlocked gate on the highway. And it was a very dramatic story, right? But when she says, hey, why do we do this? We do this so we don't experience something traumatic as that, which has happened to some people that we knew, right? So first point is, do things with intent. Okay. Second point is become an observer of others and bring valuable feedback to what they're doing. So that way they can become better, right? Or give them your teaching. Rob, we paid the dummy tax so that you don't have to, right? Well, let's allow somebody to make a minor mistake, but let's help them through that and then teach them. So become an observer of what others are doing. And that's kind of what I did with the kids out there when they ran into the fence a little while ago. Let's see how they're going to figure this out, right? Number 3 is apply some patience. Realize that people won't have it on the first go around, but your willingness to have patience will allow them to learn. Again, this applies. I'm not talking about just in the family unit or at school or with your kids. This is real life employee scenarios. Is apply some patience and allow people the time to learn. If they're reading some instructions and they don't get it right away, give them the time to read it again. If they've asked you how to do something and they don't get it the first time, show them again and again and again, because all that will pay off over time, right? So 3 really, really good points. And then I'll stop at 4. The 4th one is give people the opportunity to do these things. Delegate. Okay, that's the word I was looking for. Delegate. Allow people to learn on their terms, give them the responsibility, and then apply those other things, and you will see growth. You are indeed investing in the future, and you will reap the rewards of that. So those are my top 4. There's probably a lot more. I look forward to hearing some of your ideas.
Well, we'll go deeper 6 months from now too on the same topic, I'm sure. But I think you're right on this, Jim. The best way to learn something and to be a master of anything is to teach other people what you know. Mm-hmm. The best teachers learn every time they do it. I know this from being a teacher, reading the lesson first, reading, whether it's history, whether it's English, whatever it is. And maybe that, homeschooling parents probably have an edge over public school teachers even, because they're learning all the different subjects first before they can teach it to their children. And it makes a difference to be a teacher. So my first recommendation here is make yourself the teacher. If you're an employee who's been there for 3 months or 6 months, then teach the new person. because you're going to learn more. You're going to solidify your own knowledge base. You're going to realize how much you've already picked up by osmosis, by not being the new guy anymore. So, the FNG, the new guy is always the one that people look at, poke fun of and all that, but we were all the new guy.
I haven't heard that term in so long, Rod.
I'm not going to define it on here. That's one of my other points, but be a teacher. Don't be afraid to be the teacher.
Yeah.
And being a good teacher, this is point number 2 for me, is giving the student freedom to fail. Freedom to learn means freedom to fail also. And if that means they have to go back to the instructions and start over, then give them that freedom. You don't put them in charge of something that's going to, be detrimental to the organization or to equipment or something with that in mind. But there are so many things we can do to allow people, to give them more freedom to find themselves. And maybe they're going to come up with new ideas for us, how to improve, how to be better, because it's a new set of eyes on it. We're going to teach them the way we were taught and the way we've found to be the best way. They may have improvements to it. So even being the teacher, keep your eyes open to the fact that maybe you don't know it all. Yeah. Being a teacher doesn't mean you don't know it all. It means you're free to fail still also. Good teachers are. Anyway. Okay. And number 3, I'll keep mine at 3. Make it relevant. When you're just like with your kids, and the walk around with the trailer, we have to find ways to make learning relevant. And that's for employees, that's for our children. It has to be relevant to them. And I'll give you a quick example on this. I was asked to be a guest speaker at a homeschool event, and they were teaching a government class. And it was, I believe, 5th graders. And they had spent the last couple of weeks memorizing the Pledge of Allegiance and the preamble to the Constitution. And so as they're going through the preamble to the Constitution, I thought, I bet these kids don't even understand what this really means, right? What is domestic tranquility? And so I asked them, how many of you know what domestic tranquility is? And when I explained what it was, it's peace in the family, right? Your domicile is your family, it's your home. And tranquility means everyone's happy. I said, do you want to be happy at your house? Yes. Oh, we lost you.
No, we're good.
Are you there? Okay,
yeah.
Something happened on my computer. There you are. Anyway, just defining terms about being happy in your household, being happy in your family, and then expanding that out and saying, we also want to be happy in our community, in our city, in our county, in our state. And for the United States of America, we want everyone to be happy. That's really what it means, domestic tranquility. And the same thing with providing for the common defense. That's where we have police and firefighters and a military, the National Guard and ambulance services. Those are things that all help us. And promoting the general welfare. Do you know what that means? If we start breaking things down to a point where it is relevant to whoever the audience is, and by the time
No, I really did lose you. So we're going to let Rod go off into cyberspace and start to wrap the show up. So, I think as you're listening to the show and you're thinking, okay, where does this apply to me?
But they
go ahead and reflect back on the ideas that we've given you to help the kids, help the youth, promote the future, and invest in people around you. Rod, we lost you for a whole bunch of that time, so I filled in for you, by the way.
Bad. What happened? I don't know.
Yeah. So anyways, we're gonna wrap this up. And by the way, we are looking for ideas and suggestions. Otherwise, you're gonna keep getting ours. And Rod, I'll let you in on a little secret, by the way. I don't think of these topics very far in advance. What I do is consider what I've heard in the community, in business, on podcasts, as early as the last 24 hours, because you get a sense, and I think it's just being in business for so long, you just get a kind of a gut instinct and a sense of what's important, what's relevant on everybody's minds through, your inputs. And that's how I come up with the topics. So I know they're always last minute for you, and you do a great job responding to them all. So one last closing thought from you, anything?
Well, I think the last closing thought is always be willing to learn something new.
Yeah.
Just be teachable. Know that we don't know it all, and assume that no one else knows it all too.
Yeah.
Even if they assume that they do, just assume that they don't. And then I think we'll all get along better.
Love it. Love it. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in. If you like the show, please share it. I know I say that all the time, and clearly you are, because our numbers are growing and growing. So thank you for that. If you want more, we do this podcast every week. Or if you want to be a part of the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate, please go online and fill out your request, and we'll approve you and let you come on into our Young Entrepreneur Syndicate community. We meet every Monday night on Zoom, 6:00 Mountain Standard Time. And then we've got tons of resources online if you're an entrepreneur or if you're looking to expand what you're doing personally or in business. So, Rod, look forward to talking to you next week on the show.
I do too. Thanks, Jim.
Right on. Thank you, everybody.